Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast. Today, we have an exciting interview with Kathleen Brown, a Democratic nominee for Texas 13. She's running for the U.S. House candidate seat. And now here's the thing. Kathleen does not represent Tarrant County. She does not represent Fort Worth. But what she does represent is the state of Texas. And what I love is that she is running as a Democrat in the most conservative district in the country. And so I think, you know, she's joining Tony and I on the pod. What we're excited about is just getting her take on what it's like to run as a Democrat in rural Texas, and how do we navigate as if you're a moderate Republican or a libertarian or a moderate Democrat, how do you navigate these far right-wing politics that has taken over Texas? And so this is a great interview. We learn a lot about Kathleen and her story, why she's running for office, but then also she gives some great insights on what we need to do better or think about as we prepare to make Texas better. So here is Kathleen Brown.
I'm Kathleen Brown, and I am running for the U.S. House of Representatives 13th District in Texas. People who don't know that, let me tell you a little backstory about it. It is the most conservative district in the nation.
Wow.
Like more so than even East Texas, if you will.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I'm running on the Democratic ticket. So this should be fun.
What made you run for office?
Well, I always thought, you know, I wanted to make the world better, you know, that whole savior complex we have. But I'll tell you, I made that decision on January 6th. I kind of had a feeling it was going to happen after my opponent won, because he started tweeting the big lie. And then on December 28th, he set out this, you know, this is what we need to do to take back our country. And then on January 6th, he tweeted hashtag stop the steal, fight for Trump. And moments later, there was an attack on our Capitol. And I thought, you know, if I am complacent about this, I'm complicit in it, and I'm not going to leave him unopposed.
Could you let us know what was the normal job and story of Kathleen Brown before running for office? Like your experience and just kind of, just a little bit about you.
So how I used to put the beans on the table, and still do, is I am an attorney at law in a smaller town. It's about 105,000. It's Wichita Falls. And for 20 years, I helped people. Like if someone they loved died because of negligence of their worker, the employer, I helped them right that wrong. If they were going through someone trying to put a little old lady into guardianship to, you know, basically strip her of her millions of dollars in the bank account, I fought for that little old lady. If there were people who were in a really toxic relationship, were abused by their significant other, I helped them get out of that relationship. So that was my background.
Do you want to go ahead and also dive into a little bit about your upbringing, or just like your story of just like, how did you become such a, you know, someone who wanted to change the world, someone who wanted to right wrongs and do good in the world?
Okay. Well, so I'll go in a little bit of a backstory. It's a little long-winded, so I'll try to pause every once in a while so you can ask questions. But so before I was a lawyer, I was a respiratory therapist for 8 years. And how I became a respiratory therapist, when I was 16, I married a man who was much older than me, basically so I could have a place to live. I was without a home, or unhoused, as they say, when I was 13, after my mom attempted suicide. Myself and my 4 siblings were basically shipped to different family members. And then we moved around, you know, because family members, it's all great if it's a month or two, but it's different if it's a year. So I would ping pong from my aunt and uncle to my grandmother to back to my mom until she got evicted. And so finally, when I was 15 years old, I met a man who was 22, and we started dating. He had his own place. My dad, long story short, my dad, who was a chronic alcoholic, came home one day when I was in school, and he started cooking when he was inebriated and he burned the apartment down. And so he fled, right? So I'm 16 years old. He's gone. All her stuff's gone. You know, I'm making $2.15 an hour at Sonic while I'm going to high school. And so Daryl, who was, you know, he's now deceased, said, you can move in with me. So, I mean, what was I going to do, right? You can't get an apartment when you're 16. So I did. And then a few months later, you know, he's like, you have to marry me because this is statutory rape, which was true. So I did. And then, and I got pregnant. And so that whole story is how I get to how I become a respiratory therapist. Okay. So back in the day, you were what's called tracked. When, in other words, the school kind of figured out your background, you know, are you college material, not because of your merit, but, you know, what is your environment like? And so they said, you know, you're not going to go to college. So why don't you go into this, this work program where you basically work at Sonic for $2.15 an hour and you take bare minimum classes to finish high school. So I did that. And when I got pregnant, of course, we didn't have a vehicle because, you know, I was making $2.15 an hour and he was making $6 an hour. And so we also didn't have the medical insurance. So it was in Harris County, which is down in Houston. And so I had to go to the Harris County Health Department. Now, what I find so interesting about this story is at the time, another friend of mine was going to go to one of those for-profit colleges, which are not in existence now. And I'll get into that later. And so when I was at the Harris County Health Department in Pasadena, Texas, which was the former headquarters for the KKK, I was, what was it, 1989, I guess? A Black nurse was just killing time and she saw I was young, you know, because I'm 50 now. So I had a baby face, right? And she was like, so what are you going to do? And I said, well, I was going to go to Concord Career College. And she says, baby, don't do that. Go to San Jack Community College. You'll pay less. It'll take you a little longer, but you'll get a job as a CNA. And, you know, I'm like, okay. So I do it. And I go to San Jacinto College and I take the adult education entrance exam, which is, can you read, can you write, can you do math? So I take that, right? Because I'm going to go do their 8-week program and be a CNA and make minimum wage, which was a lot for me because minimum wage would have gone up to $4.35 from $2.15. And so I take the test and they notify me and say, you need to come back and take the college entrance exam. So I guess I did well, right? And so, you know, I don't know anything. I'm like, okay. So I go back over there. I take the college entrance exam. And by then, you know, I'm probably 8 months pregnant and I'm in my senior year. And or halfway through it. And they say, we want you to go to the nursing program. But you have to take the SAT. See, and you remember now I'm 17 and a half. I don't know what an SAT is. I don't know what an ACT is. I didn't know there was an entrance exam for college because I was tracked. Like no one told me, you know, you have a future. They told me go work at Sonic and be a car hop, you know, and be a waitress the rest of your life. So, so 10 days after I have my daughter, of course I had no SAT prep, right? I live a quarter of a mile from the school. So 10 days after Mika's born, I walk to South Houston High School and I take the SAT. And I scored very well, actually, somehow. And so obviously, long story short, I was accepted San Jack. I said, listen, I'm about to have a baby. I need health insurance for her when she's born. How can I get a job fast at a hospital? And they said, okay, go to the respiratory care program because at the time it was a year. And so that's what I did. And that's how I became a respiratory therapist. That's my story. So I was working in the intensive care units at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital at 19 years old. Yeah.
And then how long were you doing that until going into law? And then how that influenced you get into politics?
Okay. So how that got me into going in law, right? So I'm working, you know, I'm a kid, 20, 21, working in the cardiovascular recovery room, which is where they came out of the Texas Heart Institute's medical center after open heart surgery. And I meet a nurse. So it's going to be kind of the same story. And she was dating a young man that was in law school. And I think we were talking about politics at the time because I was really frustrated with the GOP's reaction to AIDS at the time. There was a really bad AIDS epidemic, and respiratory therapists would care for young men dying of AIDS with pentamidine treatments because they would get pneumocystis carinii, which is a fungus in their lungs. And I remember taking care of a young man. He maybe was like 3 years older than me. He had just had surgery, and I was feeding him ice chips when Jesse Helms came on Fox News, and the topic was the AIDS epidemic. And Jesse Helms said that, and he's also, he claims to be a Christian, Jesse Helms. And I remember him saying, where this young man could hear it, that gay men are getting what they deserved as God's punishment for their sins. And I'm 20, and I'm like, that's it. I'm not going to be a Republican, But anyway, so that's how we started talking about politics. And I think I might have been relaying that story to her. And she said, you should go to law school. And so I said, okay. Granted, at the time when she said that, I had only had 1 year of junior college. So I looked into what you needed to do to be a lawyer, and you had to get your bachelor's degree. So I worked. It took me about 7 years to get my bachelor's degree because by then I had 2 children and a full-time job. So I went back to community college, finished as much as I could there, then went to University of Houston Clear Lake, finished my bachelor's degree there, and then took the SATs and then got accepted to law school, and then that's where I went.
Yeah. So how does that impact your that story, I feel like, and the counties that you serve, how does that mold you? Because it just seems like you're an underdog throughout your life. It seems like you were always, you weren't a traditional college student. You weren't a traditional high school student. You didn't take the traditional path, and you're not taking the traditional path of politics either, and going against someone who's often unopposed and a big national name. And so I just love to know, like, how does that underdog story really mold you as a politician and really connect with your constituents?
Well, let me tell you this. All of us are underdogs, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, every last one of us have somebody trying to tell us, what to do, or we can't do it, or you should only do that. And the thing is even though my underdog story is a little more, colorful than others, all of us are the underdog in the end of the day. And I guess what made me lead, what kind of made me go, I need to do something politically, is I feel like for the first time that our country is really in jeopardy. And I have to say, if our old Congressman Mac Thornberry was running, I wouldn't care. I'm like, I don't agree with your policies, but you're not going to destroy our democracy.
Yeah.
And so Ronny Jackson, that's my opponent, he, in my very humble opinion, would destroy our democracy. And he's working to do it right now. And he's been doing it since November 4th of 2021. It's, I have children. And if we don't preserve our democracy, which I think is on the ballot this time, they may not get a chance to participate in it in 2024.
Yeah, and I appreciate you naming it. And, unfortunately, political races means you are running against someone as an incumbent, right? So I want to know what specifically, like, what are the things that he's doing that make you question whether or not he can preserve our democracy? And then how will you, what are the actions that you can take to oppose that?
Okay, now I don't refer to him as a leader, but theoretically he's supposed to be in a leadership position, right?
Right.
Well, if you have leaders, that means you have followers, correct?
Correct.
And he is, considered a leader in this area. And what he's done since November 4th is, and this, if you follow fascism, America is in the legal stage of fascism right now, according to The Guardian, which is one of the most trusted news sources that I rely on as an attorney. And my job is to make sure that when I repeat something, I feel like it's been thoroughly vetted, it's not opinionated, it's well reasoned, right? So the Guardian had, and I agree, they say we're in the legal phase of fascism in America, which alarmed me. So I started researching more. And Jason Staley, whose book I bought, I'm not here to plug it, but I'm just saying it's great, is how the story of fascism or something like that, the politics of us and them. And he also has a little video about what you look for fascism. How Ronny Jackson fits that mold. Number one, he undermines people's belief in the integrity of our institutions. He did that beginning November 4th, saying that, the election was stolen. And I got to tell you, before I just jumped on board with that, lawyers have access to a thing called PACER, P-A-C-E-R. And we can go in there and for 10 cents a page, we can read every single filing in every federal court and see what they're actually saying. What lawyer is going to put their name behind this pleading, right? Because what you say on the news and what you say in federal court are two different things. Because lawyers, if we make something up, we could get disbarred for it or sanctioned, okay? Mm-hmm. I'll start going into PACER and I didn't read all of them because after a while I saw a theme, right? But I read about 23 petitions by Trump and all of them said the same thing. None of it said fraud. It was petty stuff like, one of the county, the election clerks were telling people, I want to let you know that we're going to throw your ballot out. So if you want to vote, you need to come up and vote. I mean, that's not fraud. That's voter integrity. Right? Mm. He calls it fraud because he's like, but you didn't help me make sure that they didn't get to vote. Mm. And so the thing is, and we've all learned since then that the 2020 election was the most secure in America, right? But Ronny Jackson, knowing this, he should know this because I know it. He started saying every single day, the election's stolen, the election's stolen, the election's stolen. And then he did a call to arms. He did, telling people we need to fight for Trump. And he told them to follow me on Parler. And he set out this plan of how you take over the government. So that's a step 2 of fascism, right? You start okaying violence to get what you want. And one of the third things you do in fascism, which he's doing again, is, the truth matters when it helps you and it's fake when it doesn't. So, for example, Ronny Jackson, who's a physician, mind you, when we had the Omicron variant and then this latest variant, called it the midterm hoax, okay? Because he knew what happened when people get concerned about their lives, right? They vote for the party that's going to protect that life. And so last year and this year, he did it again. He is, by all definitions, a neo-fascist, in my opinion. My strategist is like, don't say that. That's just, it'll turn people off. I'm like, I'm running in a red district. The beauty of it is I get to speak the truth, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why I asked too. Is like I want to hear you be bold enough to be like, yeah, I'm going to call it what it is, and I want to say it out loud. So I appreciate you saying it and giving a very like detailed and descriptive view of like, I'm rooting it in this. Here are my sources, and here's the here's the evidence to support that claim. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So now let's talk about it from a lens of Texas citizens and politics, and how does people like Ronny Jackson pull off what they pull off and still get people to vote for them? I mean, you're seeing this not just in your county. I'm sure you have peers and other colleagues who are talking about it in their districts and their areas. And like, how are people voting for these fascists or these anti-democracy and that the voting is rigged? From your time running, what can you experience talking to Texans, and just how does this happen?
Truth hurts, as Lizzo says, okay? So here's the truth, America. These neo-fascists are getting into power because we don't vote. Mm-hmm. In my county, Wichita County, except for 2018, our average voter turnout is 29 to 30%, okay? Mm-hmm. The same all across the 13th district. It's 29 to 30%. So what you have is what the Germans had in the 1930s, okay? They have a third of the people harming a third of the people while a third of the people sit around and do nothing. Mm. And so it's up to you at the end of the day, right? I can't stop fascism, but the voters can. And how they do it is they get up and they get registered and they go vote. And that's the only way. But that's how they're getting power. We're letting them. 70% of the people are sitting out.
Yeah, but how is it even working? Like, where I'm blown away, because you even talked about Mac Thornberry, and like, man, what I wish to have normal Republicans like Mac Thornberry these days. Like that would like, I mean, I'm looking at Ronny Jackson's Twitter, right? I mean, retweet if Biden is the worst president ever. The FBI is an undercover Democratic police system. I mean, things that, you know, even if you feel these things as a leader, you wouldn't act like a 12-year-old on Twitter and just do this. Like, I feel like all caps tweets, do all these kind of things. Like, and like you said, he was a physician. I mean, he was a physician for Obama. I mean, like he knows what he's doing, but somehow the cards are saying this is the right way to get this third people to vote for you. And like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, when do we get our conscience of intelligence as Texans to be like, all right, at a point, like, how many cases does Trump need to have to realize, okay, yeah, I think something's up with this guy. He's a grifter. But like, so I would love to know your kind of take there. Like, how are they able to sabotage the minds of conservative Texans who at one point were just voting for the Mac Thornberries of the world, and it was all good?
You know, I don't know, because I'm not a psychologist. I'm definitely not a deprogrammer. But if I'm talking to people, what I hear when I actually go out there, there are some people that as soon as I tell them I'm running on the Democratic ticket, they shut down. Okay, you can't reach those people. I don't know why they want to believe what they want to believe. My theory, based on zero science, okay. My theory is that for some people, their party affiliation is like their core identity.
Yeah.
And you can't, for them, you can't take that away. And I don't think they really want fascists as so much as they don't want to admit that maybe the thing that they've built their whole life on is just a falsity. You know, and it's tragic for people, because I wouldn't want to believe it. Like, you put everything you've had in this party or in this marriage or in this job, whatever it is, right? Or in this child, and then realize that what you've devoted your whole life to is destructive. You know, why the reason to answer your question, based on my lens, why do women and men stay in destructive marriages? Why do men and women stay in dead-end jobs? Why do men and women stay with a church that they've lost their faith in? Because it's so hard to let go. And that's my completely unresearched, no scientific backing theory about why a group of people just cannot see the truth. Because Bezos says, truth hurts, man. It really does.
Yeah.
So for me, I would tell them, it's like, you have not left your party. Your party has left you. And if you want your party back, you have to check your party. Just like you check your husband or your kids or your boss. You're like, I've had enough. You're on the wrong track. You're supposed to be receptive to me and loyal to me, not me loyal to you. And the easiest way to check the GOP, in my opinion, is to reject them in one of the most safe districts they have everywhere across the nation. That's how you do it.
Give me kind of your, how can moderates, like, because that's the other thing. It's like, you see, like, you're a moderate Democrat. And in fact, I think if Tarrant County was in your district, you would probably do really well here. What is, how are there moderate Republicans who are trying to fight it even from that side that you're seeing locally or from the state level? Or, like, it seems like, how do we find the moderates like yourself to not make the Democrat as scary or make the GOP candidate not the right person because there's a moderate Republican like a Liz Cheney in Wyoming? Like, what are you seeing as a moderate, and how does that make you stand maybe possible to thrive in Texas compared to when people think Democrats, they're fear mongering the AOCs, the progressives, and how have you managed that as like the power of being a moderate?
So for the one thing you have to do, okay, if you're running in a red district or if you're running in a Trump, I call it under Trump's thrall, like he's a vampire, right? Or if you're running in under Trump's thrall district as either a Democrat or a Republican. And like I said, we won't know if this works until November 9th-ish, November 10th, right?
Yeah.
When I mean, if it's a close vote, there'll be a challenge. It's not for me, of course, because I'm like, look, wow, I can't believe I got close. But it'll be from the other side. But what I would tell you to do, seems to be working for me, is you have to know the issues, okay? Because the problem is you treat people like a lost cause, right? I mean, I was in Perryton, which is it's almost on the Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas border, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up north, red. It's like 91% Republican, okay? But the problem with Perryton is that no one goes out there because they're like, why bother? I'm like, because they're still going to be your constituents. If you consider, and this is my kibitz to Democrats and moderate GOP. If you consider people a bother, that they're not worth your time, then why do you think that you're worth their vote? So that would be my number one thing. Go out there and meet people. You have to know the issues. Like Ronny Jackson, he could tweet all he wants that the FBI is awful. Meanwhile, in Amarillo, they have a real drought issue. They're worried about the water running out. The reason meat prices are so high is because corn is so high, and corn is so high because there's not enough water. Okay. It's all cyclical. And so what you should be doing, what someone like Mac Thornberry would do, is say, okay, how can I work with Republicans and Democrats to figure out how we can conserve water so that, that we can continue to live? Because you can live without oil and gas. You can't live without water. Mm-hmm. So that would be like my number one advice. Know the issues and know the people. And then maybe you have a snowball's chance.
Yeah.
All you can do is tell the truth, know the truth, inform your constituents, because there's people who are going to lie to your constituents. And it's our job, which we fail to do, in my humble opinion, as representatives, to inform our constituents. So if you tell them the truth, there'll be someone there to tell them a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Our pod is very much Fort Worth listeners, Tarrant County listeners. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like what you deal with it on steroids. Like you deal with the dark conservative red, high GOP takeover. But it is also, what was that kind of fringe politics? It's really in the urban core as well. And we're seeing it in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. What do you think that big cities like Fort Worth can do that maybe it's hard for you to do in your area, that maybe allow them to communicate, combat this rhetoric that you see kind of happening in your area?
Well, luckily for y'all, you have more resources, you have more listeners, you have more advertising. I think it's really important, not a plug for y'all, but I do think it's important for podcasters to get people who are knowledgeable to just talk about the real issues. Okay. Because if you think about it, propagandists, they don't go into detail with anything. They get like tight little sound bites, which is a problem for Democrats. We're not good at sound bites, but I'm going to try one right now, which is inform the public. That's what big cities can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess in that vein of informing the public, your district is different than Fort Worth, right? And I think a lot of that district may even look at an urban core, a city like Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, right, as the problem with where Texas politics is maybe going. What's the argument against that, right? What's the argument that cities have so much power, urban areas have so much power, that we have to continue to vote a particular way to balance that power, right? And not for nothing, I do think that urban cities sometimes lack the sight of, like, Texas is a giant state, and a lot of it doesn't look like the urban core. So I'm wondering how we get those, not only the two sides of the aisle, but even just the multiple sides of Texas, to kind of see, like, what is the greatest good for all Texans, and not just what's good for me right now in this moment.
Okay, so I'm going to get in trouble from the Democrats right now, but I'm like, we have to learn as Democrats. I've learned this running this race, okay? And I'm telling y'all can believe me or not, but I've never been in politics. If you look, my most political active thing is I think I block walked once for Beto in 2018. That's it. I'll put a sign up. I do like most of us, right? I'll put a sign up. I'll throw $25, $50 somewhere. But I wasn't even going to the Wichita County Democratic meetings. All right. You have to do that. I hate that it's this way, but right now you have to do that, or you will not have the freedom to do that. So, where I'm going to get kibitzed about this is, if you don't feel like the Democrats are the party for you, you need to at least support moderate Republicans. Okay. Because I can fight with Adam Kinzinger all day long about where money's spent. Hell, I fight my husband all day long about it. Right. So, I mean, that's normal. What we've lost is our normalcy. What should be happening between Republicans and Democrats and libertarians and Green Party is we say, listen, we've got to, it's normal fights, if you will, disagreements, because what we're trying to do is get to some middle of the road. I'm not happy, you're not happy, but we both can live with it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But what has happened is the GOP has no backbone, and they will not stand up to Trump because they're worried about what will happen to them, like what happened to Liz Cheney. I'm like, yeah, she lost that battle, but she's going to win the war, right? Mm-hmm. Hell, I've never given a penny to a Republican, and I gave to Liz Cheney. So basically, to answer your question, what big cities need to do is they need to get active. You have to participate. You have to get on, I think it's causes.com, and find out how your leaders are voting, because they'll say one thing, but they'll do another. You have to make informed decisions. You have to vote for your representatives like they're going to affect your life and your children's life, because guess what? They are. Yeah. And the fact that we're hinging, which blows my mind, the entire future of the world and our freedoms and our children's rights and our grandchildren's rights and our ability to have a job and our ability to retire in dignity and our ability to control our bodies. We're letting that be decided on 2 letters in the American alphabet. That's what is literally happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, like what do you, so how do you feel? You mentioned libertarians, and do you see more of that? And what is their main concerns, or like, what do you see? Because if you, Beto, the people in Deborah Peoples here in Tarrant County, if these people are going to win, it's going to get these moderate Republicans and libertarians. What are they saying to you? Either why they consider voting for you, or why they're considering going against their party, or voting on a Democrat. What are you seeing are their biggest concerns?
They love their country. Mm-hmm. That's what they say. I love my country. This is ridiculous. They see what I see. I mean, it's hard not to see it when it's literally happening. For instance, what did Ronny Jackson say about the FBI? That they're a Democrat?
Yeah. Undercover Democrat poised as a crime, or as a police force or something like that. Yeah.
Let me remind people, in case you forgot, what the FBI does, right? When your child gets kidnapped and is across state lines, guess who's going to help get your child back? The FBI. When you have been kidnapped, your beautiful young daughter, who's 18, 19 years old, is kidnapped and human trafficked into a sex ring, guess who's going to help? The FBI. When there is drug smuggling across state lines, guess who's going to come in? The FBI. And I'm like, why on earth would you attack the people who have the power? Because I'm telling you right now, the state police, they don't. Why are you attacking the very people who can actually help you cross state lines? Listen, if you got a beef with Merrick Garland for issuing the subpoena, I don't. I'm an attorney. I do it all the time. I'm like, I ask nicely, and then I say, okay, you're not going to do it, so I'm going to give you a subpoena. You ignore my subpoena. Okay, I'm going to go to the court, and I'm going to get a bench warrant. That's what I'm going to do, okay? Because third time, you're out, strike. And then I'm going to get that bench warrant because you didn't do it the first 2 times, right? Yeah. And then the police officer is going to go execute the bench warrant. He didn't have a dog in that fight. He is just doing his job, okay? You had 2 opportunities to avoid it, but you didn't want to do it, okay? And now you want to, that's like me attacking the police officer. You people need to think about why you're attacking an FBI agent who would literally die for you, take a bullet for you to get your kid back, or to prevent drug smuggling or money laundering or all the heinous things that happen that the state police have no jurisdiction to take care of. That's my little beef for the FBI. No FBI.
And the quote was, the FBI has turned into a secret police force working for the Democrats, all caps. Was the tweet 22 hours ago. But
I'll say it.
So what I love is like the hope, you running as, not likely to win. You're running against a big fight. You said the biggest conservative area in the country. What is your advice to other people who just, other Democrats who say, why would I run in Texas? Why would I do politics? You remind me of someone who ran here, Tara Wilson. She ran for city council seat in a red area. So there's so many people like you who are inspiring, who go up against the odds. And it seems like we need more of you in Texas to do that and fight against the odds. What is kind of your message to people who are on the fringe or like, hey, what's the point of running? And so I would love your take there.
Abraham Lincoln ran 6 times and lost 6 times before he became the president of the United States and in slavery. That's why. It's big, bold action that changes our country, not going with the flow. Mm-hmm. You only coast going downhill, right? Anything worth having is worth fighting for. And if you think our democracy came easily, you don't know your American history. Mm-hmm. And we're at that precipice again. We can either fight now when we actually have, before we've lost our freedoms altogether, or we can wake up in 25 years and try and take down a fascist regime. That's all I can do.
Yeah. And
I'm not convincing people. Like I said, I owned up to my complacency for 48 years of my life. I voted and I gave money and I might have posted a yard sign. But if you have the ability, like if you have the space in your life, if you have the fire in your belly and the ice in your veins and the rod in your spine to run, you need to do it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You lose. Well, hell, you weren't a representative anyway. So you're just right back where you were. You just have this thing on your curriculum vitae that a lot of people don't, which is, you know what? I suited up and I went into battle and I ran that race. So, I will say we're here for you. I do want to do a little plug for people who want to support Democrats who are running in red districts. I don't care because, the truth hurts, Democrats. I'm going to tell you, you need to give to those people. Do not give to the Texas Democratic Party. Do not give to the DCCC. And I'm a Democrat, and I used to give to them. I ain't doing that anymore because when I told them that I was running, they flat out said, you're on your own. When you come within 5 percentage points or $1 million, then we'll maybe give it some thought. Meanwhile, you waste $250 million on a race for a Democrat against Mitch McConnell, who honestly may or may not win. And I'm like, can you imagine how much more good the DCCC could have done if they had taken that $250 million and spread it across, all of us Democrats running? I mean, gosh, I'd flip out if I got $250,000 from the DCCC. I mean, I could really move the needle with that. But you want to give all of it to one guy. That's crazy.
And what is and it seems like Republicans do a really good job at local elections. Like they have an understanding of how to attack it, donate for it. And so you're just saying the Democratic Party doesn't really do a good job of that. Like there's just no cohesion there. Is that?
There's not.
Yeah.
And the thing is the Republicans, I mean, as much as I disagree with their policies, okay, I would totally take a playbook from their political strategies. All right. Yeah. Listen, if it works, I'm going to borrow it. Yeah. And I remember Gilbert Hinojosa, who I did not vote for as a delegate for the Texas Democratic Party, saying in a article somewhere that if the Republicans wanted to waste, and that was his words, their money on a 5-point Democratic seat in Texas 35, they can go ahead and do it. Okay, what? Guess who took that seat? A Republican. So it sounds like it wasn't a waste to me. And that's how the Republicans, I'm telling y'all, that's how they do it. They go in and they talk to people and they find out what's on their minds, and they, for good or bad or whatever, they they inject themselves into the very core of politics, from dog catcher all the way up. And Democrats, we just keep going for the gold ring instead of saying, hey, you know what? Newsflash, the dog catcher and the school board and the city councilor and the mayor and the commissioner and the sheriff and the district clerk, all those people matter. And Democrats just don't spend the money. They're like, oh, if it's hard, why not? Why do it? Mm-hmm. And so, I'm really convincing the DCCC right now and the Texas Democratic Party, and I'm unapologetic about it.
Yeah. Well, I only have a few questions, and I would love to leave you time to, any call of actions and how our listeners and Tarrant County, Fort Worth can support you on your journey. My last two questions is the first one is, how does church and state play together in the sense of Republicans being able to mobilize their people locally? A great example here in Fort Worth is we have a church called Mercy Culture, and they had someone run for mayor, and he got fourth. I mean, that guy just was a real estate agent. I mean, he was going up. I mean, the other candidate spent six figures. But their church was able to mobilize and get them up there. I mean, past the person we endorsed on our pod who got fifth. So it seems like church are very a key mobilization for their strategy. What is your take on how that is happening? And I'm gonna imagine, as the Bible Belt, I grew up in your district, so I imagine the Bible Belt has a lot of that strategy. When you say the 30% who does vote, I'm assuming it's everyone who goes to the same churches on Sunday in your areas.
Well, I would say, okay, this is the difficult part, right? So they want they being the church, want separation of church and state to the extent that they don't have to pay taxes, right? And that's how they can afford mansions and private jets and all that good stuff, right? Oh, they love it then. But suddenly, you're violating my First Amendment rights and my freedom of religion if you say, okay, but don't take political stances. You want to be able to talk politics, knock yourself out, I'm going to tax you, okay? If you don't want to be taxed, you need to stop talking about politics. And if you do, and I find out, I'm going to tax you. That's the way it works, because your job is to lead people spiritually, okay? And when you take advantage of the tax benefit you get to basically take our freedoms that include your freedom to practice your religion and use them against me, well, then I think it's only fair that you pay the taxes I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love that. So, I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love that. My last question is around the growth of the Hispanic population and how Hispanics play in the state of Texas long term. People like you who maybe run again in the future and continue to fight for your district, the Hispanic vote is going to be very important. But as we know, it's not a monolith. How do you see Texas politicians navigating our booming Hispanic population?
Well, for Republicans, they go for the Catholic vein, which is, because some Catholics even believe that ending a pregnancy is akin to murder, and they'll go so far to say if it's between the mother's life and the baby's life, the mother should sacrifice. Okay, and listen, if that's your belief, and you get pregnant, and it's between you and your baby, and you want to die for your baby, I mean, I think that's a very noble, loving concept. Okay, but that's your choice. And for the rest of us, our lives are different. We might be someone that if we die giving birth, our children will be orphaned, and they're a little bit older. And we all know what happens to older children in foster care. That's where they stay until they age out, right? And so I would say for those people who are voting Republican strictly on an abortion issue, you've got to remember that that what you're voting for is to take someone else's right to make a decision about their family and their body away from them. And is that what Jesus wanted you to do? And then for people of the Hispanic community who don't vote, I want to tell you at least what the Texas GOP want for you, okay? And Ronny Jackson has tweeted it. If you were trafficked over here from Mexico when you were 11 or 12 and you stayed here, You came over in Ronny Jackson's mind illegally, and you shall never, in Ronny Jackson's mind, become an American citizen. I have a real problem with that. Okay. If you came over as a dreamer, you're 3 years old, you didn't know. I mean, heck, you could barely feed yourself then. He tweeted they should never, all caps, because he loves all caps, get amnesty. Think about that. Think about how your Republicans think you're such a second-class citizen that you don't even deserve the right to vote. But they will definitely take your tax dollars. And you've got to remember, our country was founded on the fact that we threw tea in a harbor in Boston because we were sick and tired of paying taxes and not getting representation. And the Republican Party is okay with that. They're also, if you haven't been paying attention, making you a target, just like the Germans did to the Jews. They're calling this the replacement theory, which means, that that's not a dog whistle, okay? That's just a whistle. They are telling people that Hispanics are trying to replace them in their right to vote, in their jobs, and their benefits. I think Ronny Jackson tweeted something like, Hispanics get better health care and voting rights than you do, which is a bald-faced lie, by the way. And what do you think that does? What do you think that, I'll tell you, I know the answer. It makes people treat people of Hispanic origin like second-class citizens. And when you become a second-class citizen, what historically happens is people burn crosses in front of your house. People murder you for having the audacity to talk back to a white woman. People tie you up like they did to, I think, Richard Byrd, to the back of a truck and drag you to your death. Okay. So I don't mean to be an alarmist, but I'm alarmed because that's what he talks about. The Germans did it to the Jews. They called them rats. And the Republicans are doing it to us today. They call us demon rats. Do you see the corollary? So I'm very worried about our country. So Hispanic people, Black people, women, anybody who's not a white, Protestant, affluent, straight male, you are on their list. And if you don't believe me, you'll wish you had in 20 years if we don't do something.
Well, I think you definitely were alarming and shared a strong view here that I think would get a lot of our listeners riled up and just passionate about this, as I know worries are everywhere in Texas. I want to give you the floor. This is your kind of end here. Any call of actions from us here at the 817 podcast and our listeners. One, on our end, thank you for coming on the pod. All the best on your run, and also just being to me, a true, just someone fighting for the right thing. It's really inspiring. And do you have any last kind of words for everyone?
Sure. I think in a nutshell, the reason I've always worked hard for people who are less fortunate is because my backstory, and it's deeply rooted in my faith. And if you don't have that faith, I don't mean to offend you, but I want you to tell you where it comes from for me. I felt like God put a hedge of protection around me. And there were so many times as a child, I could have been raped or trafficked or strung out on drugs or abused for child pornography. All these horrible things. And every time he put someone in my path that led me to a better place. And that's why I told you about all those people in my life, because every interaction, from that woman who told me not to go to that Concord Career College, to that nurse who told me to go to law school, to me, they were placed there for a purpose. And you are that purpose too. You may not know it, but you are that purpose too. So if you feel moved inside to do anything, be it follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, get active and say, hey, can I make phone calls for you? Or someone else, it doesn't have to be me, anybody. Can I send you $5? $5 is money. Think about it. If 100,000 people send me $5, I just raised $500,000. That's crazy, right? Just to help me with that fight, or someone else. If you see someone who's doing the same fight in your district and you want to send them $5, believe me, we are a dollar. We are so appreciative of it. You could go to my website, which is www.kathleen4tx.com. You can volunteer, you can donate, you can email me. I check my own emails and you will like, oh my gosh, she called me back, because you matter to me, because God made you and God made me. And don't ever think that you didn't. And even if you feel like it's hopeless because you're in a red district, it's never hopeless, and you never lose until you gave up. And that's my spiel.
Awesome. Well, Kathleen Brown, thank you so much for joining the 817 podcast. We'll put all your information into the description notes of the pod. Again, it's www.kathleen4tx.com. And good luck. And we're really excited to see the November. So
okay,
good luck.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, EJ.
All right, so there you have it. Kathleen Brown, everyone. Really excited for her journey. Please understand, she is a Democrat running in the most conservative district in the country. So if you can, please support her. Like her on Twitter, Facebook, any social media. And if you can donate, go to www.kathleen4tx.com. That's kathleen4tx.com. We need people like her across the state of Texas continue to fight even the uphill battles like she's facing in District Texas 13. Thank you so much for listening to the pod. Like, subscribe, share this pod if you know someone who lives in Kathleen's district. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Please remember that we will not be doing an episode on Labor Day weekend, so you won't hear from us until 2 weeks. So enjoy your vacation. I sure know I will, and so will Jimmy and Tony. So thank you so much for listening to the 817 podcast.
'Cause I do it, I got it, and get where I'm going.